Hi there, my name is Molly Maynard. I'm an attorney at Pisgah Legal Services specializing in consumer protection work. I'm here today with Tai Johnson, who works as a community economic facilitator for Pisgah Legal. And before we get into today's topic, I want to talk a little bit about Pisgah Legal and what we do here and why we're here for the community. We're a nonprofit that provides free civil legal assistance and advocacy to people living in low income, to help low income people meet their basic legal needs and improve their lives. Our areas of focus are civil legal aid to help people with housing, safety from abuse, and access to healthcare and income security. One of our primary areas of focus is housing. And when we say housing, we mean helping to keep people housed, so helping to stop evictions and foreclosures, helping to get people housed, helping people get into rental housing if they need that kind of help, and even helping with things like improving the conditions of housing or doing community advocacy to try to increase the supply of housing. Today, Tai and I want to talk about the ways that people who are homeowners in our community can protect themselves from the kinds of scams that can result in them losing their homes. Tai, do you want to talk a little bit more about your role here at Pisgah?
Sure. So as Molly said, my name is Tai Johnson. I work in the Community Economic Development Department. I am currently the Community Economic Development Facilitator, and my job is to be in community and bring in and help to develop competent business plans, schemes, or groups to assist people with projects and businesses that directly will increase economic opportunity, economic mobility, or housing opportunities inside of Asheville. Like Molly said, we're here to talk to you today about a very specific issue. Do you want to go into a synopsis for those folks who may not be familiar with the Watchdog article?
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about that. So you may have seen some coverage recently by the group Asheville Watchdog about some schemes and scams that have operated locally for years, unfortunately, and have really harmed our community and in particular, some community members. These schemes target vulnerable people who are homeowners and have ended up depriving some people of the ownership of their homes, the community of community generated wealth, and unfortunately, in some really sad circumstances, have even led to homelessness of people who were formerly homeowners. These scams have been operated by bad actors who seek out people who have vulnerabilities because of issues with the way that they acquired their homes or the titles to their homes, or because of hardships that they've undergone that have caused them to get behind on their taxes and things like that. And through their knowledge of the legal system, have been able to, in really dishonest and unfortunate ways, take ownership of their homes. So what we want to do today is kind of talk about, first of all, how to recognize a scam if you are potentially the victim of one, or if somebody that you know, a neighbor, a family member, is maybe being targeted. And also talk about some ways that we can help, Pisgah Legal can help, and you can help to empower our community members to protect themselves. So there are a bunch of different versions of these scams that have kind of been a part of this. The first thing that I always want to talk about when these kinds of things come up is just how to kind of recognize that maybe an offer you've been made or something like that isn't on the level and might actually be a scam. And the first thing, you've always heard people say, if something seems too good to be true, it probably is. And that's a good indicator. But the other ones that I always want to point out to people are, if somebody is coming to you and saying, your home is at risk and I can help you, but only I can help you. And you need to do this quickly and without talking to people who you trust, that's a red flag for me. One of the things that I have seen over the decade that I've been at Pisgah is a lot of what people call foreclosure rescue scams. So someone is facing foreclosure because of hardship that might be because of a death in the family, because of job loss or disability, and they get behind. And then one of these bad actors comes to them and says, hey, you're going to lose your home to foreclosure. There's nothing that can be done. The only way to be helped is for me to, help you sell your house right now for some small fraction of what it's worth. I always want to push back on that, because here at Pisco, we've seen that there are a lot of ways to prevent foreclosure. That can be with a legal defense through us at court. It can be with a loan modification or a bankruptcy. And I always want to see if people want to keep their homes, I want to see if we can do that for them. And we can't always, but often we can. And I think that nobody should sign over their home because they're scared in the moment and being told they have no other options. They should always have the opportunity to explore those other options first.
I agree, Molly. Can we walk through a scenario of how this would actually work out? So how does these things occur? How would this occur? I'm grandpa. I purchased a home and I have my siblings living with me and their children are living here, and I pass away. What is the danger of me passing away without having my things in order? And what does it mean to have my things in order?
Tai, that is a really great question. And it's getting to one of the issues that really came up in these articles a lot, and that's heir property. So Tai, if you, Grandpa Tai, pass without having a will done, your property is going to pass through what's called intestacy law in North Carolina. And that means that, if you have a will, you say, I want this to go to my son, Dan, because Dan is the person who most needs to stay and live in this home because maybe he's disabled or maybe he has young children to care for. And you can put that in your will. But if you say have 3 children and you pass without a will, the home's going to get divided evenly by the law between those 3. And maybe that's what you would have decided to do anyway. But maybe one of those other children has some debt issues, and a judgment creditor comes and tries to take his share of the house to pay that off. Or maybe one of those children isn't on good terms with his siblings and decides that what he wants to do is sell off the house, and it takes it away from that child who you really thought needed it and wanted to give it to. Or, and this is what we've seen happen in these cases that have been in the news, maybe one of those kids has moved away and isn't really in touch. And one of these bad actors finds out that he has a third of this property, that he doesn't really know what's going on with it. And they call him up and say, hey, Bob, Grandpa Ty's son, Bob, we were looking and it looks like you've got to share this property in North Carolina. And, that's probably just, on your mind and it's giving you trouble. You could even face some legal liabilities if you don't do something about this. But you know what? I can buy this from you for $2,000. That's cash in your pocket. And you just sign this paperwork and you never have to think about it again. And he says, great, sounds good. I know that Grandpa Ty had a property there, but I hadn't heard anything about it in years. And now this bad guy has the right to sell that property. And he can do that even if your other children, Grandpa Ty, are still living there and still depending on that house. And that's what we've seen happen a lot, is they force a sale through something called partition. And it's technically legal. And as you say, these folks are competent. They know how to move these levers and make these things happen. And then if the rest of the family who's still living in the home can't afford to buy out whatever price this sells for, anybody could buy it, including the bad guy could end up buying the whole property at the sale.
So if I'm Grandpa Ty, would it be best for me to leave my home actually written out in the will to all of my children and to everyone so that they will all have equal shares of it written? Or should I get that in the order and say I would like to have it left to one person and just understand how I want it to be used? Which one would be best to protect my children?
That is a really personal decision that Grandpa Ty is going to need to make. And I think Grandpa Ty gets to make that in my best scenario with a competent attorney sitting down and talking to him about exactly what he wants and what the needs of his family are. Sometimes the right thing for somebody is going to be to split it up between all 3 children. Sometimes the right thing is going to be to leave it to one person individually. And those are such personal, individual issues that I really think everybody should have the opportunity to sit with an attorney who is knowledgeable about the law and about how those things are going to work and make that decision with, Grandpa Ty knows what his family needs. An attorney knows how the law is going to work. And we should be able to put those pieces together and have Grandpa Ty come up with the best plan for himself and his family.
So when should one actually start getting their affairs in order? Should I wait until I have land and other things? Should I wait until I'm close to death? Should I wait until I have a health scare? Is this something that should be just a basic part of competent financial planning?
I think this is a great part of financial planning. I think that once somebody has an asset that they would want to make sure to take care of, that's a good time. I also think that once somebody has children, it's a good time to think about these things. Even if you haven't acquired property yet, you can say, whatever I have, I want it to go to my spouse, my child, my parent. But I definitely think, and I think this is what you were getting at, you don't want to wait until something bad happens. You want to have this in place to take care of your assets and your family sooner rather than later. And Pisgah Legal is available to help with this for a lot of our community members. We serve people who are low income, but anybody can apply. And even if they're not eligible for our services, we can often direct them to somebody in the community who could help with that.
And so when we get to Pisgah Legal being able to be that intermediary to give people, the technicians, the attorneys, the lawyers, and the other community members who have the actual technical skills, who should reach out? Is it only able, or is only the elder themselves able to reach out? Can a family member reach out? Does Pisgah have any way to engage with a person who may not be able to have access to the internet or come in personally?
Great questions. So we're always, as attorneys, going to need to talk to the person who has the legal need. So that may be the elder or the homeowner. But that said, we know that for some folks, it's not comfortable reaching out. Some folks don't have access to the technology, or, we even often work with people who don't have access to phones themselves. And so people can reach out through a trusted loved one, and we can figure out a way to work with somebody and meet them where they are, be that physically. We, our attorneys ourselves and also volunteers, have frequently gone to meet with people at the hospital, in their homes, in places and spaces where they feel comfortable. And we can also work to meet people in terms of translation services and other technologies that might be helpful. Sometimes we have staff who can help with translation, and when we don't, we can do that through services that help us with that.
You touched on the confidentiality aspect of it. What if I, as Grandpa Ty, I may know what I want, but I don't want everyone to know, whether it be my neighbors or even other family members and relatives. So if I were to come to a Pisgah Legal, do I have that privacy of knowing that others won't be able to readily know?
Absolutely. And that's why even Grandpa Ty, if your son calls us and tries to set up an appointment for you, we're not going to do anything until we talk to you, because it is your legal need. And as an attorney, you would have confidentiality with us to make sure that your privacy is protected.
So let me do a quick synopsis of what I hear from Molly for our community. It's important for you to have a will in place, not when you're sick or when you're getting close to where you feel like you may be sick or the end, but as soon as you have things that you want to protect those assets. Part of that being your children, but we're not going to write them in the will. Directly, Pisgah can assist with giving pro bono services to people in the community who may need a will. They can reach out to Pisgah either directly themselves, or a trusted family member can reach out to them and have Pisgah reach out using our language services if you have the language barrier, or some of our other humanitarian services if you need someone to do your intake on for you over the phone as opposed to online. We didn't talk about that, but I just wanted to throw it in there. So, okay, Molly. So what should I do if I'm the child of someone who may be vulnerable to something like this, and I would like to find out some information?
Yeah, so like maybe if you're someone who inherited a home and you're not sure whether your parent or grandparent had a will or something like that. So what you need is something called a title search. And that's something that an attorney can do for you through looking at public records to figure out who owned the property and how it was passed to you, whether that was through a deed or through a title, and who else it might have passed to. And this is especially important if it's been a generation or two, because it can be really easy to lose track of all the cousins or siblings or whatnot who might be involved. That's a really good scenario to call Pisgah Legal in. We can get you connected with somebody who may be able to help you with a title search to figure out how many people own shares of the property in question. And then, hopefully these are all people you know, and maybe you can get together with your siblings or your cousins and come up with a plan for how you want to handle the family property and make sure that it stays in the family, as opposed to leaving it out there vulnerable to one of these potential bad actors who might be looking to take advantage.
So thank you for that response, Molly. Can we go into a few scenarios that people may run into where we can play out some of the roles?
Yeah.
All right, so scenario number one, I am homeowner, grandfather Tai, and I am close to, I've just got a diagnosis saying that, I'm gonna have to go to the hospital and I'm already a little bit behind on my payments for my taxes for my property. And now I'm receiving mail and I'm having my first conversation with someone who said that they can help me out with this. How would that usually go?
So it can go a couple of different ways, but what I hear most often is that somebody comes and knocks on the door or gives somebody a call. It also happens through the mail, but I think that more often it's happening in person. And they'll
Okay.
say, I'm here with, my group or myself individually, and, I saw that you're in foreclosure and, that could be really bad for you. You could lose your home, but I'm here to help. And, that sounds good because maybe this is something that's been on your mind or something that you've been really worried about. And the red flags, I think, are when they say things like, don't tell anybody else about this, and usually they won't be quite that explicit. It'll be more like, we got to do this today. There's no time, and we've got to get this signed quickly. Now, just to put on my lawyer hat for a minute, it's never going to be that fast. There's going to be court dates. You're going to get notifications. There are going to be notices. If it's a property tax foreclosure, you're going to get notices from the county before it goes to court. And even once it goes to court, there's going to be notices of a court date. If it's a mortgage foreclosure, just the same. There's going to be notices and then court dates and even appeal periods, although you don't want to let it go that long. So if somebody's standing at your door saying, you're going to lose this house tomorrow if you don't do something, that's a big red flag. And in my mind, that's time to call Pisgah Legal, because the first thing that I would do as an attorney is call over to the courthouse and find out, like, is something really happening tomorrow? What's going on? And then when we find out that it wasn't, we know this person's being dishonest.
So what if I'm grandson Tai and I've been left a property, my father didn't want it, my grandparents left it, no one actually transferred the deed over or so on, but I've just been living here for a bit. What are some red flags that I should be aware of from my perspective?
Yeah, so if you know that you're living in a home that came to you through an inheritance, maybe not directly through a will, maybe even through a will that left it to several people, a good thing to do is a title search. And that's how you're going to figure out that, who exactly the parties are who might own it. If something has happened and you're facing one of these actions where somebody has grabbed a piece of it, bought it from a cousin or something like that, what you're going to get probably is a notice of a partition action or a notice from an attorney saying, like, we want to buy you out for some amount. Partition actions are legal, and sometimes they happen in ways that are beneficial for all the parties, or at least are not terribly harmful, but they can be used in really damaging ways. And so again, if you're getting notices about your home in the mail, I would really encourage you to seek out trusted counsel, whether that's an attorney at Pisgah Legal, another attorney in the community who is, trustworthy, or even, sometimes it's just good to talk to somebody else you trust and say, like, this is coming in the door. Should we be talking to an attorney, or what should we be doing? And with legal matters, of course I am an attorney, but I really do think that the counsel of an attorney is really important, because this can be so technical. But I think it's always a good thing to just talk to somebody in your life that you trust first, or in addition to that kind of thing, just to get a check. Because, if you call up a buddy or somebody who you trust and who cares for you and say, hey, there's somebody here asking me to sign over my house, they're going to say, slow down. And sometimes that's the check you need, especially if you're worried, because there's not much as scary as facing the potential of losing your home. And so the people who I have worked with over the years, this tends to be a very scary and anxiety producing thing. And when somebody comes to the door and says, I have a solution for you, sign right here, it's very tempting. And so I would, I think I'm talking to grandson Tai right now, but I would just say to my friend and colleague Tai and to our community members, this is also something to help your neighbors and your elders and your loved ones watch out for, because you may not always know exactly what's going on with somebody, but you might know they've been having a hard time. And those are the folks who are maybe most vulnerable to stuff like this.
Okay. So before we wrap up, is there anything else that you can think of that you want to leave inside the minds of our community?
I think the most important thing that I would say is to be to err on the side of calling, err on the side of reaching out for help. Because when something as important as your home is on the line, it just can't hurt to get more information. And we're here to help with that, whether it's just a quick, phone call for some advice or full-on legal representation. We hope to have the chance to talk to you. We're not ever going to charge a client. Nobody who calls us for advice or for representation is ever going to be charged by Pisgah Legal. So I think taking the time to give us a call is a really smart move in that situation.
Well, I'm Tai Johnson, CED Community Facilitator at Pisgah Legal.
And I'm Molly Maynard, a consumer protection attorney here at Pisgah Legal.
And thank you guys for joining us today. You can reach out to us at Pisgah Legal if you have any questions, comments, or concerns.